The man made the sound that might have been a laugh. Drank some coke. You think I enjoyed having to mess that shit bag up the way I did right now? I don't know. But you think I did. I know you think I enjoyed it. And I did enjoy it. But you know what the difference is? The difference. I didn't have a heart on when I did it. That's the difference. Rydell saw a shiver go through Chevette's tensed white thigh. Ever been to San Jose, Rydell? Costa Rica? That's right. Never have. People know how to live there. Do you work for those data havens down there? Rydell said. I didn't say that. Somebody else must have said that. So did he, Rydell said. He was carrying those glasses of somebody up from Costa Rica, and she took them. I was glad she did. So glad. I was in the room next to his. I let myself in through the connecting door. I introduced myself. He met Lovelace. First time. Last time. The gun never wavered, but he began to scratch his head with his hand in the surgical glove. Scratch it like he had fleas or something. Lovelace? My nom. Nom de thing. Think she's tight right now? I could tight myself. A sweat had broken out on the man's forehead. Now he wiped it with the back of the hand that held the gun. But Rydell saw the gun click back into position like it was held by a magnet. Turn on the headlights. It's okay. Left hand off the wheel. Why? 'Cause you're dead if you don't. Well, why? Just do it, okay? Sweat running into his eyes. Rydell took his left hand off the wheel, clicked the lights, double-clicked them the high beams. 2 cones of light bit into a wall of dead shops, dead signs, dust on plastic. The one in front of the left beam said, The Gap. They were parked in a sort of plaza, in a mall, the stores all boarded or their windows whitewashed, either underground or else it was roofed over. Know what, Rydell? What? You don't know shit about shit. As much as I tell you, you'll never understand the situation. It's just too big for someone like you to understand. You don't know how to think in those terms. The intensive belongs to the company that owns the information in those glasses. Singapore, Rydell said. Singapore owned Data America too. You can't prove it right now. Neither could Congress. How come the stuff in those glasses has everybody's tail in a twist anyway? They're going to rebuild San Francisco from the ground up, basically, like they're doing to Tokyo. They'll start by layering a grid of 17 complexes into the existing infrastructure. 80-story office, residential, retail, residence. In the base, new buildings, man. Sunflower, Chevette said. Didn't look like she regretted it. Somebody's been looking. Gold teeth flashing. So what's the problem? They want to do that, let them. The problem, this Lovelace said, starting to unbutton his shirt, is that a city like San Francisco has about as much sense of where it wants to go as you do, which is to say very little. There are people, millions of them, who would object to the fact that this sort of plan even exists. Lovelace's skin was running with sweat now, in spite of the cool, kept blinking and wiping it back from his eyes. There were flecks of white stuff at the corner of his smile, and Rydell was back in Turvey's girlfriend's apartment, looking into Turvey's eyes, and it just clicked what she'd done. Dumped that whole bag of Dancer into the coke she'd brought him. He had his shirt undone all the way now, the dark fabric darker with sweat, and his face was turning red. Lovelace screamed then, a high, thin, inhuman sound like a rabbit with its leg caught on a wire, and started pounding the butt of his pistol into the tight crotch of his jeans like there was something terrible fastened on him there. Something he had to kill. Each time the gun came down, it fired, blowing holes in the floorboard the size of $5 pieces. Chevette came off that console like she was on rubber bands, right over the top of the center bucket and into the cabin and back. Lovelace froze, quivering, like every atom in him had locked down at once. Then he smiled, like maybe he'd killed the thing that was after his crotch, screamed again, and started firing out through the windshield. And Chevette, she was going just about that crazy herself, trying to beat her way out the back of the RV. Out there, Rydell said. Who? Svalov, Rydell said, guessing that might do it. The bullets came out of the little gun like the rubber cubes out of a chunker. By the third one, Rydell had reached over, deactivated the door lock, and just sort of fallen out, landed on his back on some cans, rolled, kept rolling till he hit something. those little bullets blowing big holes in the glass of the dead stores. A whole section fell away with a crash. He could hear Chevette Washington pounding on the back door of the RV, and he wished he could get her to stop. "Hey, Lovelace!" The shooting stopped. "Svobodov's down, man. He needs an ambulance." On his hands and knees, up against some low-tiled fountain smelled of chlorine and dust, he saw Lovelace scramble down from the driver's side, his face and chest slick and shining. And Chevette, she was still trying to kick her way through the hex cell, or whatever the back of the RV was made of. Then Lovelace put a couple of bullets into it, and she all of a sudden stopped. She didn't see that first bullet, but it must have hit a wire or something, because the lights came on. She did see the second one, or anyway the hole it blew in the leather-grained plastic. Something inside her stopped, learning this about bullets, that 1 second there isn't any hole, the next second there is. Nothing in between. You see it happen, but you can't watch it happening. Now she could hear him yelling, somewhere outside, hoarse and hollow and chased by echoes. Held her breath. Down by the door. Driver's side. It was Rydell, the door on that side standing open. She edged through the door in between the buckets. Saw Rydell's head there by the open door, grabbed the keys and threw them sideways without looking. Snatched her pants and scooted backward. "Why don't you lie down flat on the floor back there?" His voice from the driver's seat. "Lie down. Minimum silhouette. He's going to start shooting when I do this." Ignition sound. Glass flying from fresh holes in the windshield, and she threw herself flat. The RV lurched backward, turning tight, and she could hear him slapping the console, trying to find some function he needed, as more bullets came, each one distinct, like someone was swinging an invisible hammer, taking care to keep the rhythm. Then they were in a turn that almost took them over, and she thought how these RVs probably weren't meant to move very fast. Now they were moving even faster, it felt like, uphill. "Oh, fuck," she heard Rydell say in this weirdly ordinary kind of voice, and then they hit the door, or the gate, or whatever, and it was like the time she tried to pull this radical bongo over in Lafayette Park, and they'd had to keep explaining to her how she'd come down on her head, and each time they did, she'd forget. "How well you say you know this guy?" she asked. "I worked with him in L.A., he said. I was just wondering if he'll turn out like Mrs. Elliott did. Said you knew her, too." "Didn't know her," Rydell said. "I met her on the plane. If sublet's some kind of plant, then the whole world's a plot. Then I could start worrying about you, say. As opposed, say, to worrying about whether or not Lovelace or Mrs. Elliott had bothered to plant a locator bug in this motorhome, or whether the Death Star was watching for them right now, and could have picked them up out here. Then this wooden cross seemed to pop up in the headlights, about 12 feet high, with "Tune In" across the horizontal, and to his immortal downlink coming down the upright. "Must be getting closer," Rydell said. When he'd crashed out of that mall, he felt like they were sure to be right by a major highway. He'd gone screeching around this empty parking lot, just a few old mattresses to get in the way, until he'd found a way out through the chain link. But there wasn't any highway there, just some deserted four-laned feeder, and it looked like Lovelace had put a bullet into the navigation hardware, because the map was locked on downtown Santa Ana and just sat there sort of flickering. Chevette was curled up by the fridge with her eyes closed, and she wouldn't answer him. He was scared Lovelace had put one through her, too, but he knew he couldn't afford to stop until he put a little distance between them and the mall. And he couldn't see any blood on her or anything. Paradise, Southern California, a Christian community, 3 miles, no camping, electrified security perimeter, free swimming, 327 channels on downlink. And a taller cross rising beyond that, this one welded from rusty railroad track, a sort of framework stuck full of old televisions, their dead screens all looking out toward the road there. Chevette was asleep now, so she missed that. Rydell thought about how he'd used Coates' phone to get through to Sublet's number in L.A., and gotten this funny ring, which had nearly made him hang up right then, but it had turned out to be call forwarding, because Sublet had this leave to go and stay with his mother, who was feeling kind of sick. "You mean you're in Texas?" "Paradise, Barry. Mom's sick because she and a bunch of others got moved up here to SoCal." "Hey," Rydell had said, "how about I drive over and see you?" "Thought you had a job up in San Francisco." "Well, I'll tell you about that when I get there." Now here came another sign, this one not nearly as professional as the first one, just black spray paint letters on a couple of boards. "Are you ready for eternity? He lives. Will you watch watch television. Watch television? She was awake now. Well, Rydell said, Fallonites believe God's sort of just there. On television, I mean. God's on television? Yeah, kind of like in the background or something. Sublet's mother, she's in the church herself, but Sublet's kind of lapsed. Then he saw paradise down there, all lit up with these lights on poles. The security perimeter was just coils of razor wire circling maybe an acre and a half. There was a sort of blockhouse and gates set up where the road ran in, but all it seemed to be protecting were about a dozen campers parked on cement beds around what looked like an old-fashioned radio tower they'd topped with a whole cluster of satellite dishes. Jesus, Chevette Washington said. Dora, Sublet's mother, drank Coke and Mexican vodka. Rydell had seen people drink that before, but never at room temperature. The living room of Dora's trailer had a matching couch and reclining lounger. Dora lay back in the lounger with her feet up for circulation, she said. Rydell and Chevette sat side by side on the couch, which was more a love seat, and Sublet sat on the floor, his knees drawn up almost under his chin. You sure you won't have a drink, Mr. Rydell? No, ma'am, thank you. Joel doesn't drink. He had allergies, you know. Yes, ma'am. Rydell had never known Sublet's first name before. Mama, Sublet said, you know what the doctor said? You ought to get more sleep than you've been getting. Miss Sublet sighed. Yes, well, Joel, I know you young people want to change the talk. She peered at Chevette Washington. It's a shame about your hair, honey. You're just as pretty as can be, though, and you know it'll grow in so nice. Mama, Sublet said, now you know you had your nice drink. Rydell watched Sublet lead the old woman off to bed. Jesus Christ, Chevette said. What's wrong with his eyes? Just light sensitive. Spooky is what it is. It wouldn't hurt a fly. Sublet came back, looked at the picture on the TV, then sighed and shut it off. You know I'm not supposed to leave the trailer, Barry. How's that? They say I might corrupt the congregation by contact. I thought you'd blown Fallon off when you came out here to L.A. Sublet looked embarrassed. Well, she's been sick, Barry. So when I came here, I told him I was here to reconsider. Meditate on the box and all. He wrung his long, pale hands. Didn't your job in San Francisco work out, Barry? No, Rydell said. It didn't. You want to tell me about it? Rydell said he did. He woke in the dark and listened to her breathing, to the creak of stiff old leather from the jacket spread over her shoulder. Sublet had listened to his story, nodding sometimes, asking a question here and there, his mirrored contacts reflecting tiny convex images of them sitting there on that love seat. In the end, he just whistled softly and said, Mary, sounds to me like you're really in trouble now. Bad trouble. Really in trouble now. Rydell slid his hand down, brushing one of hers by accident as he did it, and touched the bulge of his wallet in his back pocket. What money he had was in there, but Wellington Ma's card was in there, too. Big trouble, he said to the dark, and Chevette lifted the edge of her jacket and snuggled in closer, her breathing never changing, so he knew she was still asleep. He lay there thinking, and after a while, he started to get this idea, about the craziest idea he'd ever had. That boyfriend of yours, he said to her in the tiny kitchen of Sublet's mother's trailer. That Lowell. What about him? Got a number we could reach him at? Why? I think maybe I want to talk to him about something. About what? Something I think maybe you could help me with. Lowell? Lowell's not going to help you. Lowell doesn't give a rat's ass for anybody. Well, Rydell said, why don't you just let me talk to him? Hey, Lowell. Who the fuck is this? How you doing? Who gave you... Don't hang up. Listen, motherfucker. SFPD homicide. He could hear Lowell drawing a cigarette. What did you say? Orlovsky. SFPD homicide, Lowell. That big fucker with the big fucking gun came in the bar there, you remember? Just before the lights went out? Lowell took another drag, shallower by the sound of it. Look, I don't know you. You don't have to. Then you just listen, Lowell. Listen up. You don't listen, I'll tell Orlovsky you saw him. I'll give him this number. I'll give him your description. And you know what he'll do, Lowell? He'll come out there and shoot your ass dead. That's what he'll do. And nobody to stop him. Homicide, Lowell. Then he can investigate it himself if he wants to. Man's heavy, Lowell, I gotta tell you. Lowell coughed a couple of times, cleared his throat. This is a joke, right? I don't hear you laughing. Okay, say it's for real, then what? Then what are you after? I hear you know people can get things done. With computers and things. Well, Lowell said, sort of. Republic of Desire. I need you to get them to do me a favor. No names, Lowell said fast. They're scans set to pick things out of traffic. Them, okay? Need you to get them to do something for me. It'll cost you, Lowell said, and it won't be cheap. No, Rydell said, it'll cost you. He pressed the button that broke the connection. Give old Lowell a little time to think about it. Maybe look Orlovsky up on the civil list. See, he was there, and he was homicide. He flipped the phone shut and went back into the trailer. Sublette was sitting on the love seat. His white clothes made him look sort of like a painter or something, except he was too clean. He almost looked like he might be about to cry. The silver eyes swung around, met Rydell's. I've been thinking about it intense secure, Barry. What you told me last night, I don't see how I can go back there and work, knowing the kinds of things they'll condone. I thought I was at least trying to help protect people from a few of the evils in this world, Barry. But now I know I'd just be working for a company with no morals at all. No, you go back to work. You are protecting people. That part's real. You gotta make a living, Sublette. Well, what about you? Well, what about me? They'll just find you and kill you, Barry. You and her. You too, probably. They knew what I told you. I should not have done that, Sublette. That's one reason Chevette and I have to get out of here, so there won't be any hassle for you and your mom. Well, Sublette said, I'm not working for them anymore, Barry, but I'm leaving here too. I just have to. Rydell looked at Sublette, seeing him somehow, in his full, intense, secure outfit, Glock and all, and suddenly that big, crazy idea thing sort of up and shook itself, revealing all these new angles. But you can't get him involved, Rydell told himself. It just wouldn't be fair. Sublette, Rydell heard himself saying about a minute later. I bet I got a career option here you haven't ever even considered. What's that? Sublette said. Getting in trouble, Rydell said. Inner tube, honey, Mrs. Sublette said. Talitha Morrow, Todd Probert, Gary Underwood, 1996. She was leaning back in the recliner with a damp washcloth folded across her forehead. I never saw that, Chevette said. She let the old lady talk. She could just sort of tune her out, the way she used to do with her own mother sometimes. She wondered what it was Rydell and Sublette were so worked up about, up to something, whispering in the kitchen. She wondered if maybe she wasn't starting to fall for Rydell. Maybe it was just that he'd showered and shaved and put on clean clothes from his stupid-looking suitcase. The clothes were exactly the same as the ones he'd been wearing before. Maybe he never wore anything else. But she had to admit he had a cute butt in those jeans. And then, Sublette's mother was saying, Gary Underwood goes through this window, and he falls on one of those fences, kind of with spikes on top. Hey, Mom, Sublette said, you're bending Chevette's ear. I was just telling her about inner tube, Mrs. Sublette said, from under the washcloth. 1996, Sublette said. Well, Rydell and I, we need her for something. Sublette gestured for her to follow him back into the kitchen. I don't think it's a real good idea for her to go outside, Barry, he said to Rydell. Not in the daytime. Well, I don't want to be in there by myself, not with my head stuck in one of those iPhone things. His parents could walk in. He might listen. Can't you just call him on the regular phone, Barry? No, I can't. They just don't like that. He says they'll at least talk to me if I call them on an iPhone rig. What's the problem? Chevette said. Sublette's got a friend here who's got a pair of iPhones. Name's Buddy. But that VR, iPhones and stuff, is against church law. It's been revealed to Reverend Fallon that virtual reality is a medium of Satan. Because you don't watch enough TV after you start doing it. You don't believe that, Rydell said. Well, neither does Buddy, but his daddy will whip his head around if he finds that VR stuff he's got under his bed. Just call him up, Rydell said. Just tell him what I told you. $200 cash, plus the time it charges. People will see her, Sublette said, his shy silver gaze bouncing in Chevette's direction. What do you mean, see me? Well, it's your haircut, Sublette said. It's too unusual for him, I can tell you that. Now, Buddy, Rydell said to the boy, I'm going to give you these $200 bills here. Now, when did you say your father's due back? Not for another 2 hours, Buddy said, his voice cracking with nervousness. Buddy kept looking at Chevette. She had on a straw sun hat that belonged to Sublet's mother, with a big floppy brim and a pair of these really strange old lady sunglasses with lemon yellow frames. She tried smiling at him, but it didn't seem to help. You're friends with Joel's, right? Buddy had a haircut that wasn't quite skin, and an Adam's apple about a third the size of his head. From L.A.? That's right, Rydell said. I want to go there, Buddy said. Good. This is a step in the right direction. You just believe it. Now, you wait out there, like I said, and tell Chevette here if anybody's coming. Buddy went out of his tiny bedroom, closing the door behind him. It didn't look to Chevette like anybody Buddy's age lived there at all. Too neat with these posters of Jesus and Fallon. She felt sorry for him. Okay, Rydell said, picking up the plastic helmet. You sit on the bed there and pull the plug if we get interrupted. Rydell sat on the floor and put the helmet on, so she couldn't see his eyes. When he went from looking at the phone company's logo to being right out there on that grassy plain, he just said, oh, because he could see that it hung there, level, and around and above it this cloud or fog or sky. There was no color and every color at once, just sort of seething. And then these figures were there, bigger than skyscrapers, bigger than anything. Their chests about even with the edges of the plain, so that Rydell got to feel like a bug or a little toy. One of them was a dinosaur, the sort of T-Rex job with the short front legs, except they ended in something a lot more like hands. One was a sort of statue, or more like some freak natural formation, all shot through with cracks and fissures. But it was shaped like a wide-faced man with dreadlocks. The face relaxed and the lids half closed. Then he looked and saw the third one there and just said, Jesus. This was a figure too, and just as big, but all made up of television. These moving images winding and writhing together and barely able to hold the form they took. Something that might either have been a man or a woman. It hurt his eyes to try to look too close at any one part of it. Welcome to the Republic, said the dinosaur, its voice the voice of some beautiful woman. It smiled, the ivory of its teeth carved into whole temples. Your name, said the mountain. Rydell hesitated. Name and number, said the mountain, or we're gone. Rydell, Stephen Barry, and then the string of digits. He'd barely gotten the last one out when the dinosaur said, former policeman, I see. Oh, dear, said the mountain. You seem to have gotten our Lowell's undivided attention, Rydell, the storm of television said. And he wouldn't even tell us what your name was. Doesn't know it, Rydell said. Doesn't know his ass from a hole in the ground. Hee-haw, said the mountain, its voice a sampled parody of Rydell's. State your business, Stephen Barry, said the dinosaur. There was something happened up Benedict Canyon. Yes. You were the driver. What does it have to do with us? I need you to do one of those for me. That sort of thing is dangerous, the dinosaur said. Dangerous things are expensive. You don't have any money, Rydell. Okay, Rydell said. I hear you, and I think I know somebody else might pay you. He wasn't even sure if that was bullshit or not. But you're going to have to listen to me, hear the story. And then they were fading, breaking up into those paisley fractal things, and Rydell knew he was losing them. Wait, any of you live in San Francisco? The dinosaur came flickering back. What if we did? Well, do you like it? Why do you ask? Because it's all going to change. They're going to do it like they're doing Tokyo. Tokyo? Who told you that? Now the mountain was back, too. There's not a lot of slack for us in Tokyo now. Tell us, the dinosaur said. So Rydell did. Sublet had this little white Euro car called a Mancho. Chevette knew that because she'd had to look at the logo on the dash all the way from Paradise. They'd left his mother with Mrs. Baker watching Space Hunter on the TV. They were both real excited about that because they said it was Molly Ringwald's first film. Rydell was just spending more and more time on the phone, and they'd had to stop and buy fresh batteries twice, Sublette paying. It kind of bothered her that he didn't give her any more attention, and they'd slept on the same bed again in the room at the motel, but nothing had happened, even though Sublette had slept out in the Moncho with the seats tilted back. All Rydell ever did now was talk to those Republic of Desire people Lowell knew, but on the regular phone, and try to leave messages on somebody's voicemail. Mr. Mom or something. Ma. But he didn't think anybody was getting them. So he'd called up the Desire people and gone on and on about the whole story, everything that happened to them, and they'd recorded it, and they were supposed to put it in this Mr. Ma's voicemail. Now here she was, walking into this place called Century City 2, and trying to look like she was there to pull a tag. There was this kind of green, tit-shaped thing up on these three legs that ran up through it. You could see where they went because the walls were some kind of glass mostly, and you could see through. It was about the biggest thing around. You could see it forever. Rydell called it the Blob. Well, she had her badges on, and she'd had a good shower at the motel, but the place was starting to creep her out anyway. And she was standing on this escalator about a mile long, just going up, and around her all these people who must have belonged there. There were elevators, Rydell said, up the other two legs, but Sublette's friend had said there were more Intensecure people watching those usually. She knew that Sublette was behind her somewhere, or anyway, that was how they'd worked it out before Rydell dropped them off at the entrance. She'd asked him where he was going then, and he'd just said he had to go and borrow a flashlight. She was starting to really like him. It bothered her. He and Sublette had both worked for the company that did security for this building, Intensecure, and Sublette had called up a friend of his and asked him questions about how tight it was. The way he'd put it, it was like he wanted a new job with the company. But he and Rydell had worked it out that she could get in, particularly if he was following her to keep track. Green light, rising up through it. They'd made her up this package at the motel. What it had in it was the glasses, addressed to Karen Mendelsohn. She closed her eyes, told herself Bunny Malatesta would bongo on her head if she didn't make the tag, and pushed the button. Yes. It was one of those computers. Allied messenger for Karen Mendelsohn. On delivery. She's got a sign for it. Authorized to barcode. Her hand. Gotta see her hand. Do it, you know? Wait, please, said the computer. Chevette looked at the potted plants beside the door. They were big, looked real, and she knew Sublette was standing behind them, but she couldn't see him. Somebody had put a cigarette out on one between its roots. The door opened a crack. Yes? Karen Mendelsohn? What is it? Allied messenger, San Francisco. You want to sign for this? Except there was nothing. No tag to sign. San Francisco. That's what it says. The door opened a little more. Dark-haired woman in a long, pale terry cloth robe. Chevette saw her check the badges on Skinner's jacket. I don't understand, Karen Mendelsohn said. We do everything via Globex. They're too slow, Chevette said, as Sublette stepped around the plant wearing this black uniform. Chevette saw herself reflected in his contacts, sort of bent out at the middle. Ms. Mendelsohn, he said. Afraid we got us a security emergency here? Karen Mendelsohn was looking at him. Emergency? Nothing to worry about, Sublette said. He put his hand on Chevette's shoulder and guided her in past Karen Mendelsohn. Situation's under control. Appreciate your cooperation. Wally Divek, Rydell's Serbian landlord, hadn't really wanted to loan Rydell his flashlight, but Rydell had promised he'd get him something a lot better over at Intensecure and bring it along when he brought the flashlight back. Wally was sort of a cop groupie, liked to feel he was in with the force. Like a lot of people, he didn't much distinguish between the real PD and a company like Intensecure. I'll get this back to you, Wally, holding up the big black flashlight. And something else, you said? Don't worry about it. When you pay your rent on Mar Vista, Kevin will take care of it. Rydell looked at the flashlight, figuring out what the safety was. It wasn't much, but he felt like he had to have something. And it was non-lethal. Guns weren't that hard to buy on the street. But you did a different kind of time if there was a gun involved. Then he'd driven back toward the blob. He got Chevette's phone out and hit the redial for the node number in Utah, the one God Eater had given him back in Paradise. God Eater was the one who looked like the mountain, or so he said. He heard the node number ringing in Utah. God Eater always picked up on 5, in mid-ring. Yes? Paradise, Rydell said. Richard? Nixon. We have your goods in place, Richard. You got me a price yet? $50,000. Rydell winced. Okay, he said. Fair enough. Better be, God Eater said. We can make you pretty miserable in prison, even. In fact, we can make you really miserable in prison. The baseline starts lower in there. God Eater burped long and deliberate. Your friends gonna shit themselves, but really, you don't want to be in the way. This'll be like something you never saw before. This new unit they just got set up. I hope so, Rydell said, and broke the connection. He gave the parking attendant Karen's apartment number. After this, it really wasn't going to matter much. He was worried about Sublette. Pretty crazy to be worried about anybody in a situation like this, but Sublette acted like he was already dead or something. Just moving from one thing to the next like it didn't matter. And Chevette, too, Chevette Washington, except what worried him there was the white skin of her back, just above the waist of those bike pants, when she was curled on the bed beside him. How he kept wanting to touch it, and how her tits stuck out against her t-shirt when she'd sit up in the morning. And right now, walking up to this coffee module near the base of the escalator, the rectangular head of Wally's pepper spray flashlight digging into his spine, he knew he might never get another chance. He could be dead in half an hour, or on his way to prison. He ordered a latte with a double shot and looked at his Timex. 10 till 3. When he'd called War Baby's personal portable from the motel the night before, he'd told him 3. God Eater had gotten him that number. God Eater could get you any number at all. War Baby had sounded really sad to hear from him. We never expected this of you, Rydell. Sorry, Mr. War Baby, those fucking Russians and that cowboy fucker, that Loveless, got on my case. There's no need for obscenity. Who gave you this number? I had it from Hernandez before. Silence. I got the glasses, Mr. War Baby. Where are you? In Los Angeles. I'd figure I'd better get as far away from those Russians as I could. Can you come down here and get them, Mr. War Baby, and just sort of call it even? Well, Rydell, sadly. I wouldn't want you to forget how disappointed I am in you, but yes, I could do that. But just you and Freddie, right? Nobody else? Of course, War Baby had said. Rydell imagined him looking at Freddie, who'd be tapping away on some new laptop, getting the call traced to a cell node in Oakland, and then to a tumbled number. You be down here tomorrow, Mr. War Baby. I'll call you at your same number, tell you where to come. 3 o'clock sharp. I think you've made the right decision, Rydell. I hope so, Rydell had said, then clicked off. Now he looked at his Timex, took a sip of coffee. 3 o'clock sharp. He put the coffee down on the counter and got the phone out. He started punching in War Baby's number. It took them 20 minutes to get there. They came in 2 cars from opposite directions. War Baby and Freddie in a black Lincoln with a white satellite dish on top. Then Svobodov and Orlovsky in a metallic gray Lada sedan. He watched them meet up, the 4 of them, then walk in, onto the plaza, under the blob, heading for the nearest elevator, War Baby looking sad as ever and leaning on that cane. He gave it a while to see if Loveless was going to turn up, then started keying in that number in Utah. Please, Jesus, he said, counting the rings. Yes? Paradise. Miss Richard? Nixon. They're here. 4, but not smiling. Okay, Rydell, let's do it. Click. Rydell stuck the phone in his jacket pocket, turned, and headed walking fast for the escalator. And now, climbing the escalator up through all these kinds of people who lived up here, Rydell found it hard to believe that God Eater and them were doing what they'd said they could do. And if they weren't, well, he was just fucked. No, he told himself, they were. They had to be. Somewhere in Utah, a dish was turning, targeted out toward the coast. And out of it, fed in from wherever God Eater and his friends were coming these packets of signals. And somewhere, high above the blob, up over the whole L.A. basin, was the Death Star. Rydell dodged past a silver-haired man in tennis whites and ran up the escalator. Came out under the copper tit. And there were the Russians, their wide gray backs heading toward the white walls of the complex where Karen's apartment was. He couldn't see War Baby or Freddie. 3:32. Shit, he said, knowing it hadn't worked, that God Eater had fucked him. that he'd doomed Chevette Washington and Sublette, and even Karen Mendelsohn, and it was one more time he'd just gone for it, been wrong, and the last fucking time at that. And then these things came through a long gap in the glass, just south of where the handball courts were, and he hadn't ever seen anything like them. There were a bunch of them, maybe 10 or a dozen, and they were black. They hardly made any sound at all, and they were sort of floating. The players on the courts stopped to watch them. They were helicopters, but too small to carry anybody, kind of dish-shaped, and he guessed they were under the control of the Emergency Command Control Communications System, who ran the Death Star. Police emergency, remain calm. And mostly they did, all those faces. Faces of the residents of this high country, their jawlines firm, their soft clothes fluttering in the dancing downdrafts. Rydell started running. He ran past Svobodov and Orlovsky, who were looking at the three helicopters that were much lower now, and so clearly edging in on them. On your faces, now are we fair? But the residents, slender and mainly blonde, stood unmoved, watching the helicopters, watching Rydell as he ran past them, their eyes mildly curious and curiously hard. He ran past Freddie, who was flat down on the granite pavers, doing what the helicopters said, his hands above his head and his laptop between them. Remain calm. Then he saw Warbaby slouched back on a cast iron bench like he'd been sitting there forever, just watching life go by. Warbaby saw him too. Police! Emergency! His cane was beside him, propped on the bench. He picked it up, lazy and deliberate, and Rydell was sure he was about to get blown away. Remain calm! But Warbaby, looking sad as ever, just brought the cane up to the brim of his Stetson like some kind of statue. Drop that cane! Warbaby shrugged slowly and tossed the cane away. Rydell kept running right through the open gates and up to Karen Mendelssohn's door, which was half open. Karen and Chevette both there, their eyes about to pop out of their heads. Inside! He yelled. They just gaped at him. Get inside! There were a bunch of big plants beside the door and a pot about as high as his waist. He saw Lovelace step around it, raising his little gun. His face was studded with micropore dressings that weren't quite the right shade, so he looked like he had leprosy or something. He was smiling that smile. No, Chevette screamed. You murdering little fuck! Lovelace brought the gun around about a foot from her head, and Rydell saw the smile vanish. Without it, he noticed, Lovelace sort of looked like he didn't have any lips. Remain calm! The helicopters reminded them all, as Rydell brought up Wally's flashlight and pushed its secret button, releasing a cloud of capsicum gas. Lovelace never even managed to pull the trigger, which you had to admit was kind of impressive. What that capsicum did, it was kind of like when Sublette got an allergic reaction, but a lot worse and a lot quicker. You crazy, crazy motherfucker, Karen Mendelsohn kept saying, her eyes swollen up like she'd walked through a swarm of hornets. She and Chevette had both caught the edges of that pepper spray, and Sublette was so worried about the residue that he'd gone into a closet in Karen's bedroom and wouldn't come out. Rydell just sat there, in one of her white armchairs, listening to those helicopters yelling outside. Later on, when it all came out, they'd find out that the Republic of Desire had set Warbaby and them up as these bomb-building mercenaries working for the Sonoran Separatist Front with enough high explosives stored in Karen's place to blow that nipple off the tit and clear to Malibu. The funny thing was, the LAPD, would never, ever admit to it that anybody had hacked the Death Star. They kept saying it had been phoned in, and they stuck to that, too. It was so important to them, evidently, that they were willing, finally, to let a lot of the rest of it just go. Then Aaron Pursley turned up with about as many other lawyers as there were cops, and then Wellington Ma in a navy blazer with gold buttons. So Rydell finally got to meet him. Always a pleasure to meet a client in person, Wellington Ma said, shaking his head. Pleased to meet you, Mr. Ma, Rydell said. I won't ask you what you did to my voicemail, but I hope you won't do it again. Your story, though, is fascinating. Rydell remembered God Eater and that 50,000 and hoped Ma and Karen and them weren't going to be pissed about that. But he didn't think so, because Aaron Pursley had already said twice how it was going to be bigger than the Pookie Bear thing, and Karen kept saying how telegenic Chevette was, and about the youth angle. And Wellington Ma had signed up Chevette, and Sublette too. but it had to pass the papers back into that closet because Sublette still wouldn't come out. Rydell could tell from what Karen had said that Chevette had told her pretty much the whole story while she and Sublette had kept her there, and kept her from hitting any intend-secure panic buttons. And Karen evidently knew all about those VL glasses. So now she knew all about Sunflower, or whatever it was called, and she kept telling Pursley that there was a dynamite angle here because they could implicate Cody fucking Harwood if they played their cards right. And was he ever due for it, the bastard? Rydell hadn't even had a chance to see that stuff on the glasses. Mr. Pursley? Rydell kind of edged over to him. Yes, Barry. What happens now? Well, Pursley said, you and your two friends here are about to be arrested and taken into custody. We are? In about 5 minutes, we're arranging to have the first press conference about 6. That suit you, or would you rather eat first? We can have the caterers bring you something in. But we're being arrested. Bail, Barry. You heard of bail? You'll all be out tomorrow morning. Pursley beamed at him. Are we going to be okay, Mr. Pursley? Barry, you're in trouble, son. A cop, and an honest one. In trouble. In deep, spectacular, and please, I have to say this, clearly heroic shit. He clapped Rydell on the shoulder. Cops in Trouble is here for you, boy, and let me assure you, we're all of us going to make out just fine on this. Chevette said jail sounded just fine to her, but please could she call somebody in San Francisco named Fontaine? You can call anybody you want, honey, Karen said, dabbing at Chevette's eyes with a tissue. They'll record it all, but we'll get a copy, too. Then Chevette came over and hugged him, all of her pressing up against him and just sort of looking up at him from under that crazy-ass haircut. And he liked that, even if her eyes were all red and her nose was running. On Saturday, the 15th of November, the morning after his 4th night with Skinner, Yamazaki, wearing an enormous cape-like plaid jacket, much mended and smelling of candle grease, descended in the yellow lift to go looking for the old woman who sold eggs. Also, they needed coffee. He was in sight of the place that roasted and ground coffee when he saw Fontaine coming through the morning bustle, the collar of his long tweed coat turned up against the fog. How's the old man doing, Scooter? He asked more frequently after the girl. She's in jail down in L.A., Fontaine said. Jail? Out on bail this morning, that's what she said last night. I was on my way over to bring you this. He took a phone from his pocket and handed it to Yamazaki. She has that number. Just don't go making too many calls home, you hear? Home? Japan. Yamazaki blinked. No, I understand. I don't know what she's been up to since that damn storm hit, but I've been too busy to bother thinking about it. I still got an injury case nobody bothered to claim yet. Fished him out of what was left of somebody's greenhouse. Wednesday morning. Sort of down under your place there, actually. Don't know if he hit his head or what, but he just keeps coming around a little and fading off. Vital signs okay. No broken bones. Got a burn along his side, could be from a bullet. But he's a big, healthy brother, and somebody recognized him eventually. Yes, Yamazaki said. And I still have your pistol. Well, if you feel like you don't need it, just chuck it for me. But I'll need that phone back sometime. How long are you going to be staying out here anyway? I do not know. And it was true. Well, see you around. Say hi to Skinner. Hey, yes, Yamazaki said, smiling, as Fontaine went on his way, the rainbow of his crocheted cap bobbing above the heads of the crowd. Yamazaki walked toward the coffee vendor and stood in the smell of the fresh ground coffee, awaiting his turn. This is Peter Weller. We hope you have enjoyed this production of Virtual Light by William Gibson. This program was produced and directed by Lars Hoel. Abridgment by Nick Warburton. Virtual Light is a production of Bantam Doubleday Dell Audio Publishing, copyright 1994, all rights reserved. The book Virtual Light is available wherever Bantam books are sold.